Good morning. Welcome to Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. I am Pastor Mark Baze. Thank you for joining us. This is our second attempt now going live. For some reason, I am no technology expert, but on that first run, every now and then it wants to start to buffer, and it may do it this time. I don't know. But on the second attempt, I just march onward. So I am recording this. If you try to tune in, and it's buffering really bad, really glitchy, I'm just going to upload this whole episode later, okay? So with that, I'll make no promises. If you want to try to follow along, you can talk in the live chat, and I can see the chat. So if you are able to tune in right now, and I can see your chats anyways. But with that, I was mentioning as we were going that our problem with God's sermon is doing quite well. Appreciate that. Thank you for watching. We're at 111 views right now. So maybe, just maybe, you all are going to be able to help promote that, or can hopefully get some good sound about what the gospel is and the problem with our gospel. We're working on getting more uploaded for you. Looks like the internet is already starting to fall apart. I will certainly try to do some research, talking to some good friends. Why it is that we're struggling so much, but it is what it is. What I do want to talk to you about is my advice for this next year, okay? Much for the remainder of the, let's see, tomorrow, Apology Thursday, and then the next day is going to be our Friday show. We'll have some stuff to discuss, and then we'll have Monday, and then Election Day, which is on Tuesday. Don't do a whole lot of talk about the election because I don't think there's much of a point. I think that essentially there's nothing that's going to probably happen between now and then that's going to change things. It is what it is, and the election rules are what they are. So therefore, this is anybody's race. I don't know who's going to win, and we're not going to win. We're not going to probably on Tuesday. It's probably going to be later in the week anyways, and at least in modern history. Obviously, you could think maybe during the days of the Civil War when we were shooting at each other, we were more divided then, but even then, maybe we are shooting at each other now. Moving on. That's kind of a joke, but at the same time, we've got people trying to assassinate the president, or at least a presidential candidate. We are certainly at odds with each other, okay? That does not lead to strengthen the union. But furthermore, I think in the days of technology, you can see the absolute worst in people come out. And we are more reliant upon technology than what we have really ever been. And so with that, okay, due to that, I think we're at a pretty unstable, even volatile time in our nation. Certainly around the world, we've got conflict in Europe, right? When's the last time we had conflict in Europe? It's been a long time, but here it is. We are currently looking at Israel and Iran going up against each other, and it's just really wild times. So it doesn't matter who is president. I think that it does make a difference on a scale, right? A national, global scale. That I think if Trump gets in office, then it is going to cool the temperature down, because I think his foreign policy is a lot better. I think that if he gets in office and is able to get our border under control, then obviously things can get a lot better. But politicians can be voted in and out quite quickly, and also the swamp that is our federal government is not so easily drained. So the problems that we're facing now will continue to persist no matter what. They can just be mitigated a little bit. What that means is you need to have a plan, all right? So your plan needs to be being resourceful, okay? Being self-reliant. And in very immediate sense, you need to make sure you have some food in the pantry, okay? That's something my wife and I have made a point to do this past year, is get some extra food, all right? Stockpiling some. Canned food is your friend, whether it's beans or fruit. All those things can last a number of years, and probably even a couple years past its expiration point. I know that sounds crazy, but if things were desperate, you don't care if those canned pineapples went bad in 2023. if you need to eat them, you need to eat them. And so go ahead and put some food back. I know that's almost sounds prepperish, but yeah, you need to be prepared, right? Also, water. Do you have a source of water? Now, fortunately, I live on some land. We have a couple spring-fed ponds. Water is available, but if you are in the city, you need to get some containers of water. And there's a particular brand that I like. Let me see if I can find it for you. You can find it at Walmart. It's the Reliance Aqua Trainer. And so it's a 7-gallon water container. And the reason why I recommend these, a lot of people want to get these massive, huge water containers. And you cannot move around a 50-gallon water barrel, right? It's too heavy. You can't do it. But if you get these 7-gallon containers right here, get you a couple of them and just keep them stocked with fresh water, probably every 3 months, okay? Switch out the water, okay? Put some fresh water in there every 3 months. And you can get by on this. That's enough for you to drink, and it's enough for you to use for, cleanliness and whatever. But get you a few of those. Stick those in your garage. If your garage is not heated, you probably should try to get a heater in there to keep them from freezing in the wintertime in case things get really bad. But with that, get some water. I know not everybody lives in rural America, okay? Some of you live in town, so do that, all right? Be smart about that. Make sure that you can have a source of water. So with that, you need to have some food. Obviously, we talked about that. Basic medicine. And by basic medicine, I mean like some diuretics, okay? If you're in a situation in which you are, dealing with, you're sick, whether it's vomiting or, the other side of things, you can get dehydrated really fast. And being dehydrated is no good, okay? And if our government continues to have wide open borders and we're letting people come across and utilize our medical care, then it may not be so easy to get in to get into town and get access to medical care. You may need to be your own doctor to a degree, so you need to have some of that on hand. We keep generally a good supply of that. All right, anti-diuretics, things like that. And I will say a major way to stay hydrated is making sure you're not just drinking water, okay? Water's great, but you do need something that has electrolytes in it to get yourself replenished. Liquid IV is really good. You can look at getting that. Even just some sweet tea with sugar in it will go a long ways. So start getting some of that stuff now, okay? I know that this sounds out there, but a lot of people want to go to apocalypse, World War III, Civil War type stuff. We don't want that to happen, but what is realistic is, guess what? Supply chain gets shut down, okay? Resources are not as easy to get to. That is much more realistic. It's much more likely that you will be short of resources at the grocery store for a few weeks and you'll need to get by with what you have. So this is much more practical probably than what many people think. We're not talking about grid down dystopian scenarios here. We're talking about uncertainty can take place. I've already been warning some of you that if you live in the urban areas leading up to this election, like if you're in in the major cities, right? We got a good friend who lives in Portland. You know who you are. Be careful. Make sure that you don't have to go out the next several weeks, especially. We're following who wins, right? Especially if Trump wins. Portland is probably nowhere that you want to be, right? So with that, Nancy says beans, bone broth. Ken says spam, Velveeta. Yeah, Velveeta if you have to. But be smart, okay? Get it done now, okay? This week. I've been trying to warn you, okay? Get it done now. Go and get this stuff this week so you don't have to go to town and get it later, all right? So here's another one, though, okay? In the coming year, you need to stockpile some Bibles. And I really do mean that. I think that having extra copies of the Word of God is of great benefit. Not only can you give them to people, but at the same time, let's say that you want to have Bible study and people want to meet and they don't have one. Well, guess what? You can give them the King James Version. All right, you can give them a good Bible translation. And who knows what may become less available. And so when I do my Bible study, okay, like here, I've still got our Biblify pulled up from yesterday. When I'm prepping for sermons, this is often what I'm doing. I will have like my companion Bible out in front of me sometimes, but honestly, I use the companion Bible more so for the cross references and some of the notes and stuff. But when I'm just using Scripture, I'm primarily prepping with the internet. But you need some hard copies of the Bible, okay? And if you have just one King James Version, get some more. We live in weird times, and digital technology can be altered. Now, thankfully, Biblify, I know the guy who created it, I know the guy who owns it, all right? Biblify is much more protected than other things. But don't just count on the internet, right, to be your source. Get Bibles on hand. You never know in which case it would be, I don't know, not allowed, okay, to have them. So I know that sounds like a crazy scenario, but stranger things have happened. So stockpile some Bibles. COVID already taught you that things like toilet paper and whatnot go out of stock, but also ammunition. I think that goes without saying here, okay? You need to have some ammunition on hand. Thankfully, we've actually, I don't know if I can do that. This is a YouTube live stream. The good news is if you go to a website to order some ammunition, if you go to whether it's, academy.com, whatever, you can find ammunition, okay? So that's all good. I did notice a comment right here from Jerry. Jerry says sweet tea with sugar has little to no electrolytes, plus the sugar depletes your minerals. Yeah, but still sugar, it is calories, so it does help. So, Jerry, I'm not saying that that's all you drink, but I get what you're saying, though. Good point. You do need to have, like I said, whether it's like the liquid IV, some stuff like that actually has some sodium in it. Those are all good things. But maybe it's just because I'm from Southeast Oklahoma and I feel like sweet tea is a necessity for us. But anyways. Just be ready, okay? I think that we've lived in a time in which life is great. We've really lived in a time of abundance. And we need to start thinking about being more self-reliant. I think one of the major reasons why we're in the situation that we're in is we have been too reliant upon the federal government to provide what we need, okay? It's time for us to start taking some of that power back. But the famous quote, with great power comes great responsibility. You also have to be willing to be responsible for yourself. So if you're not counting on the government to provide you with everything, you've got to do all the provisions yourself. So obviously there's the immediate resources that you'll need. Furthermore, you need a community of people, all right? You really do. Now, some of you have a bunch of family members that live nearby you, and that's great, all right? My family's kind of like that. I'm actually kind of one of the ones that lives further off, and I'm about an hour and 15 minutes away from the majority of my family. So it's not that far away, but a lot of my family all lives in one place, and that's really great because if they ever need anything, that happens all the time. They help each other. They're there to help meet whatever needs that the others have. So if you have a bunch of family in your area, that's great. Unless you don't get along with your family, then that's not so great. But otherwise, you need to know some people. Do you know your neighbors? We've talked about this before. But do you know the people that live nearby you? Okay, are you good friends with them? Are you at least on a level when if you did really need to reach out to them and get a hold of them, you could do it? Do you have their number? Those things matter, right? Community is going to be more important, I think, in the future. Think about the people in Appalachia. The people in Appalachia were having to rely on each other, right? It was neighbors with chainsaws helping get people out because, for one, you just couldn't get in from the outside. I mean, it would take forever because of how bad the roads were. But also, the people in Appalachia learned that you cannot count on the government to save you. All right, you cannot count on the government to keep you safe. So having neighbors in a local community is going to be extremely important. And that's how things used to be, right? Your local community was your primary focus. You didn't really worry about what was going on in Washington. You were worried about what was going on where you lived. And I think we've got to get back to that. I think we're way too isolated as people. I know my neighbors. I could do a better job. I don't have their numbers. My father-in-law does. And so with that, I can do a better job. I'm not saying I've got it all figured out, but these are things that we've got to start getting on our mind. And this is where the title of the show is The Local Church is Worth Preserving, right? The local church is worth preserving. The local church used to provide you with that community, all right? That's where you would go and you would meet with people. You could get to know them better, right? Even people that are more your extended neighbors that don't live down your road or within close proximity to you, but still in your general community. And this is where it's tough for us because you and I have been placed in a situation because of our conviction about the Word of God and doctrine and theology to where there's not really a local church for many of you that is going to accept you. You have to do one of two things. Either you have to go in and be willing to just sit there and keep your mouth shut and listen to all the bad theology that's being spewed from the pulpit. And that can be very disheartening. But yet you still have the benefit of community, right? There's people that you know, and for the most part, these people will help you. Okay, let's remind ourselves that these people who are members of these churches are often still caring people. They'll care about you just as much as any of this group will. Just because somebody doesn't understand rightly dividing the word of truth doesn't make them automatically not a loving, caring person. So you can still go to these churches and benefit from that community. Now, I'm not telling you that you have to do that, and I don't know that I could. I don't think that I would be able to sit week in and week out listening to bad doctrine. And that's probably the reason why I'm a preacher, right? Because if anybody's going to be preaching, I want it to be good theology, and I can't find a preacher that does good theology, so I'm going to do it, I guess, right? But there is the benefit in that, so don't overlook it. Now, let's say that you just don't want to sit there and listen to bad doctrine, and I don't blame you. I wouldn't want to. You are left with the challenge of trying to go in and reform that church. Now, not reform it in Reformed theology, okay? We are ultra reformed, right? We're reformed past all that little silly immature Calvinism, right? We're in the higher level of biblical understanding and theology. But you do have that challenge, right? If you really want to try to make that church your own. I will say it is more easily done as a pastor than it is just as a church member. It's just tough because no matter how good of a job you do, maybe you get to teach a Sunday school class or maybe you get to meet with people. No matter how good of a job you do as a church member, you're not getting to sway what is being taught behind the pulpit, right? So I do have the advantage of that. It's very easy for me to say, I went into my church, not a right dividing church, and I've turned it into a right dividing church. At least as long as I'm there, okay? I think that I've got my church close to a point where if something happened to me, they would stand a chance to maybe continue in good doctrine. I think, mostly because I think that there's a person that could follow up after me and do just as good of a job, just about. But I know it sounds easy for me because I'm the preacher and I was able to go in and just start teaching from the pulpit. I will say, though, it's not impossible for you to be able to make inroads at a church, okay? I think it's worth a shot because I think that the advantage of a church is good. Now, with that being said, many people are going to say, standard evangelicalism is going to say that it's your obligation to be a member of a church, right? They'll say you have to be a member of a church. And they will always quote this particular verse right here. Not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as ye see the day approaching. So obviously you and I know that Hebrews, it's a fascinating thing, but you may not know this, but Hebrews is written to Hebrews, okay? It's written to the Jewish people. And if you rightly divide the word of truth, you can clearly see that this is a Jewish book all the way through. But not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, that is, Jewish instruction. Now, is there something valuable in that, though? I think that we could all agree, and I think that you will understand where I'm coming from here. I'm looking at people that are in our chat today, okay? A lot of you don't have a church that you get to attend to in person all the time, okay? You just don't. But I do know a lot of people on this list, you have gone to Bible conferences, for example. Like you've been to the Labor Day Bible Conference with Randy. Hopefully you'll be able to make it to the Spring Bible Conference that we're going to be doing. Tease, 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 hint, hint, hint. Stay tuned. We're going to get it all laid out for you. By the end of November, you're going to know all the details, okay? But you go to those things and you enjoy those things. And you even try to attend maybe Randy's church when you can. I know that we've got Nancy there in Colorado, and you will go down to New Mexico to attend the Taos service when you can. There is just something about being in person in a church, right? That is really a great blessing, okay? That you really just truly enjoy. And so I think there is that innate quality about humanity that we are uplifted and encouraged by one another. It's always, like even just getting to meet online, like every morning, it's always, exciting for me. I know that when hopefully the internet works, and thankfully it looks like it's caught up and doing okay, I know that I'm going to get to see people who have a like-minded love of the Bible, of studying the Scriptures the way that we do, contextually, literally, rightly divided. And there's a fellowship in that. Even though I'm not getting to see you, I just get to chat with you, okay? And so there is something valuable in that. Don't neglect it. Don't devalue it, okay? Now, the challenge is, what do you do if you don't have anywhere nearby? I'm thinking about you, Alan, okay? Alan, you're a good example, but we have others as well. There's just not a right dividing church anywhere near you. What do? I don't know your background. I don't know where you're coming from, but you can always try to start a home church. I know some people who've done that. There's some people who attend my church now who used to be members of a home church. They would drive, an hour and a half, 2 hours to attend home church on Sunday just to meet with like-minded people. It's worth a shot. And it's also worth a shot to try to become a member of a local church and at least see what you can do. Some people have had success. Some people haven't. Those things happen. But I think we should be a little bit adventurous. I've listened to Jordan Peterson a little bit, and he talks about taking on challenges. I think challenges are good for us, right? You need something in life that is challenging. If everything is just easy for you and you never put yourself in uncomfortable situations, then are you really living? And once again, I'm not telling you have to put yourself in complete misery, but why not try to take it on? Take on the challenge. There's a local congregation around here. They've knocked on my door. They're really nice people. How about I try to go in and just invest in them and see what I can do? And maybe things don't turn out. I will say that if you are a man who understands right division, then churches are always hurting for pastors. Churches always are hurting for pastors. They are always looking for someone. And I know that that's maybe something that's never been on your radar. You may not feel like you can do it. Maybe you don't like speaking publicly, but if you want a church, if you want a fellowship that is nearby, try to become that church's pastor. Why not? You may be in your 40s or 50s and have no pastoral experience. Churches today are so starved for having a pastor. There are churches that have not had pastors for years. My first church, Liberty Baptist Chapel, did not have a pastor for 2 years before I came. So you can imagine their excitement when somebody showed interest. And actually, it was funny how it worked out. 2 different people showed interest at the same time, and, guess who won? But I think that it's worth a try. The local church is worth preserving. Now, when it comes to Scripture, as far as our argument for where is the instruction in our age of grace, right? Is there instruction from Paul to be a member of a local church? I don't think so. I don't think that Paul says you have to have a local church that you attend. I think that what we do find is that's naturally what happened. Whether it's the church at Ephesus, the churches in Crete that Titus was sent to, the Galatians, the Philippians. It's a natural occurrence. It's what happens. You want to be gathered with like-minded people. For one, back then, if you wanted a letter from Paul, if you wanted some revelation, right, from the Lord, you needed to go where it was. And guess what? Paul was writing to a group of people, so you assembled together. You had like-minded values. You probably started caring for one another. Guess what? You're a member of a local church. Let's say that you're in Crete. Well, one of the members there is a farmer. Well, guess what? Now you've got a great connection with a farmer. Maybe another one's a blacksmith or whatever. You just naturally start forming these communities because you can mutually benefit from one another. All right? You can do that. I think we need to get back to it. I think it's still possible, and I think the churches can do it. And so you do stand a lot to gain from being a member of a local church. But I don't blame you, though, if you don't want to be a member because their theology is bad. All right? I wouldn't want to be a member of a church if I was hearing standard evangelical theology. But I would be interested in giving it a shot. That's what I'm doing with this church. Blue Baptist Church, it's not like they were seeking a right dividing pastor, okay? They were just looking for a pastor. And so I sent in my application, and guess what? They hired me. I don't know, the experiment could fail, right? At some point, they may decide that they don't like my style of teaching. I could be voted out tomorrow, right? I don't know, right? There's any number of things that could happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that these people are on board with me and are excited about what we're doing. So I'm not worried about my job security, but what I am saying is there is no guarantee. So I'm going out on a limb just as much as, somebody else would. I have the advantage of being a pastor, though. I have the disadvantage, though, that church is tied to a Baptist association. So there's gives and takes everywhere. But what am I going to do if, let's say that something happens and Blue wants to get rid of me. And I don't think they will, and I've got probably maybe a member or two listening today, and I think that they would all say, no, we love having you. We're not planning... we're not planning to get rid of you. We want you to stick around. And I absolutely plan on sticking around because I love the people and they've been great to me. But let's just say hypothetically, what's my plan? I'm just going to start a home church. I've already talked to my wife about it. Maybe not even a home church. I may try to rent a building, maybe, in town or at least on the outskirts of town, and just start a Bible church. Call it, I don't know, Grace Bible Church or I don't know, something like that. Y'all can help me come up with the names, whatever you want, okay? But I'll just start a small little church, and I'll pastor it. But you know what? I will have some people come. There'll be some people that will join, and we may be small, but guess what? We'll still be a community. And just having even a few families makes a big difference. So A church is worth preserving. It's worth keeping. And let's say that your church that's within 20 minutes of you, like the ideal one, doesn't work out. When I first moved back to southeastern Oklahoma, there was actually a church, and as the crow flies, I'm looking at it this way, so I'm looking back to the northeast. The crow flies, maybe get a nice shot of my beard there, 4 miles, okay, about 4 miles. And that would have been perfect. I could have less than a 10-minute drive to the church. Small church, just would have been great. It's called Cobb. Okay, so I'm giving you a really close idea of maybe where I live. But they weren't hiring. They had already decided on somebody else. That was kind of frustrating because I wanted to save the gas money. And I thought, how nice would it be to live within 10 minutes of the church? That's perfect. Well, they weren't hiring, but you know who was? Blue Baptist was. And so I went there and they hired me. And they're about 25 minutes away. If you don't have a local church nearby that is teaching good doctrine or is willing to allow you to try to invest in them, is there one 40 minutes away? 45? Maybe an hour. I still think that it's worth it if you can find a church that's reasonable that you can attend, at least ever so often. Have that community, get to meet and get to know some people. Because the world's getting a lot smaller in a lot of ways. The roads are better, vehicles drive faster. Your community doesn't, while maybe ideally it's the people that are right next to you, who says that you can't build both? You can have neighbors, but you can also have the church that you attend. And so I think that if you can find a church building, and a congregation that is interested in studying the Word of God and that you can have a community with, they may not be right there by you, but nonetheless, they are there, and you can still benefit from it. It's worth investing in, because that's what we're going to have to do. We have got to get away, everybody, from this large, overarching government, and I think we need to get away from these large mega churches. I think that the larger the church, for one, the more money involved. And when there's a lot of money involved, people are more apt to want to get involved, right? More money involved, more people involved. And more money can potentially sway people, right, to do things and give motives and whatnot. I would like to make a living, right? I would hope that, I enjoy ministry, and I hope that my ministry can eventually reach the point where I can sustain my family. Right now my wife has to work, and she'll have to probably work for a while she pays off student loans and whatnot. But I would like to support my family. But I know that ministry is not a get-rich type career, unless you're preaching what people like to hear and you do pastor a megachurch. But I think just as our federal government's too big and it's too prone to corruption, I think that the larger churches are too big and too prone to corruption. We need to get smaller community churches, and that's going to be the way that we move forward. And as people become more independent, and as we start breaking away from this massive overreaching government and massive overreaching churches even, the local smaller churches are going to be the way to go. Try to find one. See if you can change one. Because here's the thing. If one of you are able to get a church to understand right division, you have just added. You've added another church on the map. How amazing is that? We need more of them. And I'm hoping I can do that. I really hope that in 20 years that Blue Baptist is not, and I've made no bones about it. If Blue Baptist keeps me for 20 years, I will pastor there for 20 years. All right. It's like hiring a judge, or appointing a judge. They serve for life, so you get them young. Like I am absolutely willing to be at that church for as long as they will have me. And so I really hope that in 20 years, I'm not the only pastor of a rightly dividing church in southeastern Oklahoma. I hope there's at least a couple more. I mean, I think that would be great, where maybe those people that were having to drive an hour, hour and a half to get to Blue, they have a church of their own. I think that would be outstanding. I think that'd be great. And not some satellite church of ours to where they gather to watch me. And if they have to, they have to. But I would love for there to be an actual pastor at that church preaching behind the pulpit, giving them good, sound Bible teaching. Like, that's what I want. But in the meantime, we'll do what we've got to do. And I'm going to continue this online ministry because some people just don't have access. And there's more than one way to contribute, right? And you've done that. You've helped make it possible. Some of the equipment that you've helped me get is not just used here, but some of the equipment at the church, like the camera that is used, like that camera angle. When you see me preaching, the problem with gospel tracks, that is, let's see here. Like that angle that you're seeing right there, that is due to a camera that you helped me get, okay? And the recording equipment that I used to get that angle, you helped make that possible. Good grief. Silly. That's the only problem with eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off all the ads on my YouTube pages. But the problem is YouTube likes to promote what they can promote. So if you deactivate the ads, then they just don't promote your video near as much, and it's really frustrating. So with that, the local church is worth preserving, and you got to have a community, because at the end of the day, the government's not going to come save you. They're not. Whether it is from famine, disaster, or other threats, they're just not going to. You can't count on them. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Or maybe they're the ones that are going to be the threat. We've got to rely on ourselves. Used to, the local churches where the militia met, they would organize, and they would even organize training at the local church. The pastor would oversee it. I think that a local church, if you have young fighting age men, and young fighting age men is a broad range. I mean, anywhere from, I would say, I don't know, 16 to 55, 16 to 60 even. If they're not at least trying to be somewhat prepared and organized, you've got a problem, okay? And I know the government's getting really shaky about militias, right? Because they remember that militias fought them and beat them back in 1776. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out, but you need a community. We can't stand alone, right? Okay, so let's see here. Let's look at some of your comments. We may wrap up the show a little bit early today. It kind of depends. If you have questions or comments that you would like me to speak to, I certainly can. But it's one of those things that I'm not going to force the show to go on longer than necessary, okay? I'm not going to ramble and just try to fill the hour. I want it to matter. Give me just one moment, though. Let's take a short commercial break, if you will. Thank you. I apologize. Speaking of local church, that was one of the ladies at the church asking me about some things for our fall festival. I apologize for the brief break there. We are tonight having a fun food and games for the kiddos, and so come on out and come see us. We'd be happy to have you. Okay, let's go ahead and look at some comments here. I'll say hi to you after I've given my spiel for a few minutes. Let's see. Yeah, Nancy said it was buffering and glitching earlier, and it was. But thankfully, it's caught up. I don't know what's going on. I'm hoping, I'm investing in Starlink, expecting it only to get better and faster. Nancy says Trump is going to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Thursday at noon, and Randy's in Florida. So I knew he went to Georgia. I didn't know that he was going on to Florida, too. That's funny. That's funny. Maybe Trump will take a wrong turn at Albuquerque and wind up in Florida. Everybody giving their recommendations. Canned chicken and tuna. You need protein. Absolutely. Absolutely you do. Yeah, camp stove and propane. You definitely need fuel. That's for sure. Nancy, talking about meeting in person. Fellowship is wonderful in person. It really is. If you have never got to experience the Branson conference, it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. I hated it that I had to leave so soon, and it was just such a brief visit. But it was a lot of fun, though. I really, it's always just something you look forward to. Getting to be in a room full of like-minded people is really a great blessing. Dandity, 11Dandity1. I've never said your whole name, but with that, it says we will have a, let's see, where did you say it? Hello, sanctified ones. This week will be crazy. Yeah, it probably will. It probably will. There's always going to be something going on, especially election cycle like this. And it says, we'll have a new president this week, but not the one we expected. Oh, yeah, well, I'm not going to read it out loud just because I don't want it to be cut off, but I will say this. Joe Biden is almost like playing sabotage for Kamala Harris. You know, he made his comment about, you know, Trump supporters being garbage. Yeah, it's almost like he doesn't want to see her win. Kristen says, I'm not going anywhere. Sorry, folks. Can't be going anywhere else. Blue Baptist Church needs me. Ken says, hey, what's this cutoff age of 60? Well, okay. If you can still do, let's say, 20 push-ups and be able to, I don't know, walk a mile with a pack on, then all right, you're good. You're good to go. I thought I was being pretty broad by saying 60. Myra says Trump will be in Green Bay tonight. Wisconsin, would y'all please just go ahead and go red this time around? That would be great. Go ahead and just go red. That way there's some wiggle room. We need y'all to do us some good. Hopefully Brett Favre can convince everybody. All right, here's an interesting question. I don't know if I recognize this name. It may be a good tomorrow question for Theology Thursday, but Bazinga Agnizabub. Okay, I'm sorry, I got your name terribly wrong. Where are you from? It's great to have you. I appreciate you being here. If we normally like to get to know new people, or if you are new, if you've been here before, then it's great to have you back. But if not, tell us where you're from, Bazinga. You say, I have a question that I'd like to see addressed. It is regarding the singular Antichrist. I can't seem to find any reference to it in the Bible. I see Antichrists, plural. Can you explain this? You know what? I'm going to do something special for you, Bazinga. Savannah? So are you telling me that you're from Savannah, Georgia? Is that what you're saying? If so, that's great to have you. If you are from Georgia, go out and vote. We need you to vote for sure. But I'm going to tell you what, because I think you're a new listener, I'm going to go ahead and answer your question now. So let's just do a little bit of an early Theology Thursday. Okay, yeah, so from Savannah, Georgia. Great to have you. All right, let's go ahead and do some investigation here. You're asking about the Antichrist singular, but you can only find references to Antichrist plural. All right, so this is an interesting question. So we really only find the word Antichrist in the book of John, I believe. Yeah, not even the book of John, the book of 1 John. So let's see, it's in chapter 2 primarily. And let's go ahead and go to 1 John chapter 2, verse 18. So 1 John chapter 2, verse 18. Now, I will tell you, Bazinga, I believe that John here is writing to the Jewish audience. I also believe that the last days regarding the tribulation, it was prophesied in the Old Testament, meaning that it's about the nation of Israel. I think that the prophecies about the tribulation and even the kingdom to come are for the people of Israel. I think that you and I live in the mystery age of grace. You could read that in Ephesians 3, Colossians 1, Romans chapter 16, that our salvation is by grace through faith. But remember, Jesus told the Jewish people they would have to endure to the end, talking about that tribulation. So I think that I just want us to keep in mind that as we're reading this, that there's going to be a Jewish context here regarding the tribulation and the last days. 1 John chapter 2, verse 18. Little children, it is the last time. It is the last time. See, that is significant there. So that reference there, it is the last time. My internet's being, or my Biblify website's being a little bit finicky, but let's look at this, okay? Here's the breakdown in Greek on Blue Letter Bible. Little children, it is the last time. Eskatos ora. Eskatos ora. And so that is a reference to the last days, okay? The last days. So it is the last time, it is the last days. And I think that what was going on is that's exactly it. In those days, God was getting ready to bring about the end times. But instead, God said, I'm going to pause all that and not pour out my wrath. Instead, I'm going to offer salvation by grace through faith. That's our gospel. And one day, God will resume the last days. But right now, the last days are on pause. So here's what John says. It is the last days in their time, and as ye have heard, that Antichrist shall come. All right? Now, I want to go over here and look at the case here. Antichrist shall come. Antichristos is the Greek word there, and if you'll notice, this is singular. It's number, okay? In regard to whether singular or plural, this is singular. So what John is talking about is the singular Antichrist in that first part, that Antichrist shall come. Then he says, even now there are many, or are there many antichrists, whereby we know that is the last time. Now, there are many antichrists. So there is this singular antichrist that is referred to right here, okay? This is the singular one. Let's just highlight that in yellow. But then John says right now, in the time that John was writing, not our time, but in his time, now there are many antichrists, plural. Let me just put that in green. These are different groups, okay? This is a singular antichrist. These are the plural. These are the many. And he says, whereby we know that it is the last time. These are the last days. Now, let's see how he speaks about these antichrists, okay? They went out from us, but they were not of us. So they were a part of us, and us would be the Jewish people, okay? John was a minister to the Jewish people. He was an apostle to the Jewish people. So they came out from them. So these are the antichrists, sometimes called maybe the little antichrists. But they were not of us. If they had been of us, they would no doubt continued with us, but they went out that they might be made manifest that they were not all of us. So these were some who were maybe Jews, well, they were Jews initially, in fellowship with the apostles, but somewhere along the way left them, abandoned the faith. I may remind you that a lot of Jesus' parables depicted this. The parable of the sower, some of the seed that fell on the stony ground and initially shot up, right, and sprouted, but then because there was no root, they were choked and withered. So that's these, okay? And so therefore he goes down and talks about who is the Antichrist, but who is a liar, he that denieth that Jesus is a Christ. Verse 22. We need to read verse 21. I have not written unto you because ye not know the truth, but because ye know it, and that no lie is of the truth. Okay? Who is a liar? So they are not liars, they know the truth, but who is a liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ? He is Antichrist that denieth the Father and the Son. Who denieth the Son, the same hath not the Father, but he that acknowledgeth the Son hath the Father also. And so, therefore, as we read this description, there is the reference to the singular Antichrist up here in verse 18, that Antichrist shall come. And then he says, down here in verse 22, that the person that is a liar and he that denies that Jesus is the Christ, he is Antichrist. Now, let me go back over here and look at our case here and see. I think, if I'm just going to speculate here, probably that's going to be in singular by how it's written. So yeah, so that's singular. He is Antichrist. So what do we say here? Is verse 22 talking about everybody in general? He that denieth that Jesus is the Christ? Is he the Antichrist? Or are we saying now John is getting specific? I think you have two options. You can say that in verse 22, John is just speaking hypothetically. Who is a liar but he that denieth Jesus is the Christ? So if there's somebody out there, somebody that left us, he is saying Jesus is not the Christ. He is denying the Father and the Son, so he is an Antichrist, singular. Like he is Antichrist, singular. You could interpret it that way, but you also have the other alternative to say, and who is this Antichrist I'm speaking of? We already had those Antichrists that were with us and then left us. They were not of us, right? They started out with us, but then they abandoned us. Those are Antichrists, plural. But who is the Antichrist? He is the liar. He is the one that denies Jesus is the Christ. He is Antichrist that denieth the Father and the Son. So you could interpret this to be either green, being all those little Antichrists that lie, or you can say, no, John is saying specifically that the Antichrist is the one that denies Jesus is the Father and the Son. And so, in this particular case, you have reference to singular Antichrist as well as plural Antichrist. Now, what we find is, in the Scriptures, there are references to a single individual, okay? A single individual. And in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, you have it, no, it's not chapter 3. Maybe it's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. That he says, now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. Now the day of Christ here, I'm interpreting this to be the day of tribulation, the day of God's wrath upon the earth, okay? I don't think that's the rapture, okay? He says, verse 3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day, talking about the tribulation, right? That day shall not come except there come a falling away first. Now, this is where some would argue that this is the rapture, okay? It could be the rapture, or it could just be reference to apostasy, just people maybe leaving, rejecting God. Both those things could be the case. I'm not somebody that argues that. I hold to a pre-tribulation rapture, but I don't say that 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 it has to be about the rapture. I think there's other evidence for the rapture in other parts of Scripture. But focus on what it says at the end here. So, except there come the falling away, and that man is singular. That man of sin, even, I'll just expand it, okay? That man of sin, the son of perdition. So we have a singular man. He will exposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, and that is worship, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Okay? So he is the deceiver. He's the liar. So in this case, you're right, he's the wicked. That shall be revealed. And he's coming as after the working of Satan. That may be talking about the Lord right there, depending on how I read this. Yeah, God shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with brightness. But in that passage, the point I'm trying to make here is there's a singular man. Now, we typically just call this singular man the Antichrist. It's been the popular term. It's kind of the more, I guess, exciting one because you have the Christ, Jesus Christ, but then there's the Antichrist. But you could call him the man of perdition, the wicked one, the evil one, right? That man of sin. Now, in other parts of the Bible, you have the prophecy of Daniel. Daniel chapter 7, I believe. No, it's not Daniel chapter 7. Well, Daniel 7 speaks of the great horn that will speak evil things, that will speak great things. So you could also call him the great horn, because I think this is a depiction of the final days. That there are the 10 horns that were in his head. This is coming up out of the beast depicted in Daniel here. And so there's this horn that has a mouth and that speaks very great things. I think that is a depiction of the Antichrist, the singular man that is to come. Also in Daniel, I think Daniel 9 is where we have the vision here. And here is the depiction of that final week. Verse 26, this is the last week of the 7 years of tribulation. And I know I'm referencing a lot of prophecy, but what I'm saying is at the last days, what the Bible's describing is there's going to be this singular man of sin, okay? This wicked one. So, after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. That is the last days. That's the tribulation. That's bringing destruction to Israel and destruction to the temple, those depictions that are in place there. So the people of the prince that shall come. I think that is a singular man. We could call him we could call him the prince that should come. We could call him the man of sin, the man of perdition, the wicked one, the great horn, or the Antichrist. And then finally, of course, you have the depiction in Revelation chapter 13. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy, and the beast. So Revelation, this is the Antichrist that we see here pictured. The beast is the same individual person. He will try to make himself set up and worshipped as God. He will deceive the people. So when I look at your question, Bazinga, the son of perdition, the man of sin, the great horn, the Antichrist, singular, these are all the same person. So when you ask your question, that in regarding the singular Antichrist, you can't find a reference to it in the Bible. You see the plural reference. You do have a plural reference in 1 John chapter 2, but you also have a singular reference in John chapter 2, like I read, that Antichrist. But you only see Antichrist, that word, appear in 1 John chapter 2. In other places, he's called the man of sin, the wicked one, the prince that shall come, the son of perdition, the great horn, and the beast. And any of those terms could have been used, but for whatever reason, we stuck Antichrist as the main term. So you absolutely have, Bazinga, references to a singular Antichrist, but he's not always called Antichrist. Sometimes he's called the son of perdition, the man of sin, the prince that shall come. So I hope that clears it up for you. A lot of times we will have a particular term like I'm trying to think of another example that we could use, but maybe the millennium. I believe in a literal 1,000-year reign of Christ. Revelation chapter 20 is really the only chapter that talks about it, but guess what? That's where we find it. So we use that term, the millennium, okay? So I hope that helped. Glad to have you on. I hope that you can follow us some more. Bazinga, I will tell you this, if for whatever reason you have some more questions and maybe you want to follow up, if you go to markbazeministries.org, markbazeministries.org, this is my website. And if you go to the bottom of the screen, right? So here's the main page. You've got Shields and Arrows, my articles, sermon notes, and all of this. Down here is our email. If you click on it, you can send me an email if you have any other questions, okay? markbazeministries.org. So hopefully that cleared some stuff up for you. All right, that was fun. And as a matter of fact, Bazinga, and for anybody else that's watching, that is what we do on Theology Thursday. But Bazinga, you are special because you are a new watcher, and I wanted to give you the benefit of having your question answered today. But tomorrow, that's what we're going to do the whole time. All right? So tomorrow's Theology Thursday. If you have any other theology questions, you can either submit them to me in an email. If you have my number, you can text me. If you want to save it for tomorrow and put it in the live chat, I will get your questions answered, okay? And we do it literally, rightly dividing the word of truth. And I'm very thankful that we live in the age of grace, saved by grace through faith, not inside of the prophetic program where we will have to face the tribulation and we will have to endure the man of sin, the Antichrist, the beast. That's not for us. That's for Israel. And so we are in a very blessed time that we live in right now, where whosoever can be saved by grace through faith. That's the amazing gospel that we have. So thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you've got some plans together. Hopefully you can start working on finding a good local church. And if not, I understand it's not easy. But the good news is we're here for you, okay? We'll continue to be teaching the Bible, standing for the truth of Scripture, because this is Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship, and we're not going anywhere. Thank you all so much for continuing to support my ministry, your prayers, your encouragement. I cannot tell you how much it means to me and my family. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow to answer your theology questions. Take care.